We're using everything tonight. It's us. Don't worry about it. Don't stress yourself. Just wait for. Okay. Good evening. How's everyone doing? I appreciate the enthusiasm. That's the most rousing applause I've ever had for a lecture. So, and that's why we sit the jazz choir up front. All right. So, good evening. I'm Dr. Emmett Goods. I'm an associate professor here and the director of jazz studies. And I also am the director of the big band. So I'm really excited to have you all here for a special night. This is our first performance of the year for the URI big band and for our jazz choir in the pocket. So tonight is a really special event, at least in my opinion. We are here to celebrate 125 years of Duke Ellington, right? 125 years of one of the most important figures in American popular culture, but also an important figure in just American music. When we talk about music that is very specifically and very uniquely American, Duke Ellington is right at the very top of that list. So we're actually a year late, but as you can see, as you look around, we've had a lot going on here at the University of Rhode Island. So while we were not able to celebrate for his 125th birthday last April 2024, we are here to celebrate now 125 years of Duke Ellington. And tonight we're going to talk about Black excellence, the ensemble tenure, which is really a unique thing in jazz, and his musical voice. So I hope that you all will take something from this and have an informed experience as we go into our concert. So why Ellington? Why do we talk about Duke Ellington? We talk about Duke Ellington in American music because he had over 50 plus years of leadership of an ensemble beginning in the 1920s. He ran an ensemble all the way until his death in 1974. He ran that ensemble. So for over 50 years, he had a group together, most of which, or quite a few members of which, had been with him the entire time, which is really unheard of in jazz. If you study jazz history and you talk about other ensembles of similar scale and composition, most of them had people that would rotate in and out on a regular basis. You'd be hard-pressed to name who the people were from one recording to the next. But Duke Ellington had a lineup that was so steady, you almost always knew who was going to be there. The other reason why we talk about him is that he had thousands of compositions, and I do mean thousands. We've been in debate about that because about 30 or so years ago, we did some research to find out that some of the things that we were giving him full credit for, he was actually had worked in tandem with what we would consider to be a ghost writer, but I don't really think you could be a ghost if everybody knew you existed, right? A gentleman by the name of Billy Strayhorn, who had been with Duke Ellington from about the time he was about many of your age, about 21, 22 years old, until his death in 1967. So thousands of compositions between the two of them. And ultimately here, we're here to celebrate 125 years of a lasting legacy. Many people talk about ghost bands, but I don't really consider the Duke Ellington Orchestra to be a ghost band. I consider it to be one of the few remaining big bands or jazz orchestras that comes from that original period in American history. And really, when you consider that this orchestra started recording in the 1920s, they're really the only ones to kind of still be, running and functioning up under that name. The Tommy Dorsey Orchestra has been on kind of a diminished schedule. They still exist, but they're on a much diminished schedule. The Glenn Miller Orchestra still exists, but they're on a much more diminished schedule. But the Ellington Band has been really consistent throughout the years, even after Duke Ellington's death, up under the leadership of his son, Mercer Ellington. So we're not just examining a band leader, we're exploring a figure whose work touches cultural, racial, orchestral, and institutional dimensions of American life. And I'll talk to you more about that in just a second. So who was Duke Ellington? How many of you all have heard of Duke Ellington? Hopefully a bunch of you guys. Outstanding. When we think about jazz, and we tend to think about jazz musicians, if we're being honest, we think about jazz musicians in a very way that we probably think about a lot of our hip-hop musicians today. People that, if they're of color, tend to come from hard-nosed backgrounds, hard-scrabble upbringings, but that was not the case with Duke Ellington. One of the reasons why I wanted to talk about black excellence is that even though he was born in 1899, he was born into a middle-class black family. He had a father that worked making blueprints and doing various government jobs, including at one point working in the White House. His mother was a stay-at-home mom. They were cultured. Both parents played the piano, which is one of the reasons why he played the piano. He took lessons with a woman by the name of Mrs. Clinkscales. So all you music students will get a laugh out of that. But Mrs. Clinkscales was his teacher. Interestingly enough, Duke Ellington doesn't learn how to read music until he's actually a teenager, because he did not take music very seriously. He was really big into what most young men were big into at the beginning part of the 20th century, and that was baseball. And so he talks a lot about spending his young years as a kid on the baseball field, and one of his proudest moments was that growing up in Washington, D.C., Theodore Roosevelt would leave the White House and come and just sometimes pull up and watch these colored kids play baseball on the field in the neighborhood where he lived, and he thought that was really cool. Music was actually not even his first choice. Much like an artist like Wayne Shorter or Miles Davis, Duke Ellington was a young artist that started out in a different medium. He and Wayne Shorter both started out as visual artists. So Duke Ellington actually got a scholarship to go to school and was on a path to study visual art, and really music ends up coming to him much later. Music to him was the cool thing that he got to do when he was in the pool halls, because when he was in the pool halls, which were places where reputable members of the community would most likely not want to be seen, right? Because there was gambling, and people were playing pool for money, and probably alcohol and all these other things. But there was also a piano there for entertainment, and he would watch the piano professors, which was a name given to a cadre or a cohort of black, we could call them early jazz musicians, but we didn't really have that term yet. But they were stride piano players, and they would come into this little establishment in D.C. where he liked to frequent, this pool hall, and he would watch them play all of the popular music and take it and kind of basically make music on the spot, to the point where some were so gifted, both not only playing music and reading music, that some would take the music after they read it down from top to bottom and literally turn the page upside down and then play it backwards, because they just didn't know what else to do with it. And so he became taken by that, and so he wrote his first piece, which was I think it was called Soda Can Rag, which was just about probably not much of anything. And it's one of the few things he never recorded. And but he wrote it as a teenager. And slowly he sees where there's a pathway towards music, and he begins to get more serious about music. And he's still studying art. And he's in art school, and he's doing art. And everybody loves a hustler. That's why I say he's connected to hip hop, right? Everybody loves a hustler. So his hustle was he was making flyers and posters for people's events. And when they would contract him to make the poster, he would say, "Have you hired any musicians yet?" And if they hadn't, he said, "Well, can I recommend my ensemble?" And he would make the flyer and make the gig. And so he was literally able to cash in two different ways. I mean, that's every musician's dream, right? Two income streams. He gets paid for making the flyer. That's all his money. No one else can have it. And he gets to be able to play music with the band. And that's kind of how he got started. And he works in Washington, D.C. for a few years before moving to New York City. Now, his move to New York City was a really big decision, because by doing what he was doing, he was able to establish himself as an adult. How many of you all here are in your 20s, right? And I know right now is a hard time to not live at home. I can remember many, many moons ago when I was your age, it wasn't that big of a deal to move out because you and a friend could make rent, right? But right now you need you and about 6 friends. But at this point in the early 1920s, Duke Ellington was able to make rent. He was able to make rent, and he was living on his own, and he was an established musician in the area, and people were calling him for different things, and he had a little band. But one of his closest friends was a gentleman by the name of Sonny Greer. And Sonny Greer was his first drummer and really kind of one of the architects of what we would consider to be the Ellington sound. And he gets called to play in a band in New York City. And so as friends do, Sonny goes to New York, Duke goes to New York. And they begin to work and to figure it out. Eventually, he has a group called the Washingtonians, because although he's in this brand new city of New York, and ultimately he would be so deeply connected with New York that people would really kind of consider him to be one of the ambassadors of the city. At this point in his 20s, he's still very much connected to Washington, D.C., and he loves the Washington Senators baseball team, and he's just about all things Washington. And so his group was an octet, which was not a full-size jazz orchestra, but it was just large enough that they could kind of cover most occasions. But ultimately, after some time in New York City, they began to connect with the right people, and that got them the opportunity to play at the Cotton Club. Now, how do we understand the Cotton Club in this 21st century? Right? The Cotton Club was a supper club. A supper club. Now, I know many of you all, this is a different generation. I remember college and going to parties, and I know you here at the University of Rhode Island, we don't do those things. Everybody's at home on a Saturday night preparing for church with grandma on a Sunday morning, right? She said, praying the rosary. Absolutely. That's what you all are doing. But most people on a Saturday night, especially in this pre-TikTok, pre-internet, pre-world, in your hand of your phone, had to go out for their entertainment. And to go to a supper club was the height of entertainment. I mean, you spent some money, right? Your partner got to get a new outfit. You dropped a lot of money for dinner, right? You got a meal. There was some drinks that were had, and I'm not talking about Coca-Cola, right? Coke might have been part of the drink, but it wasn't all that was in there. There was some stuff in there. And you would go to these supper clubs, and you would see a show. These shows were reviews. Ultimately, these shows end up being the basis of what we would now call Broadway. How many of you love to see a Broadway show? right? And if you've ever made the experience where you've gone to New York or even just gone to PPAC, you know, you maybe go to dinner before, you make an evening of it. That's what the supper club was, but it was literally a different show sometimes every week. Every week the show would change. And Duke Ellington, who didn't learn how to read and write music until he was a teenager, was now in a position where he was literally composing for these shows and writing different things to go in these shows every week and showing his skills both as a writer but also as a musical director, dealing with different dancers, people even like Josephine Baker, who would have come in and worked at the Cotton Club. So this was the height of culture. This was the TikTok, if you will, of the day, but you actually had to be around other human beings and interact and have a kind of a unique mutual experience. You couldn't have this experience by yourself. You didn't get to just send a video to a friend and then say, did you watch the video I sent? You couldn't do that. You had to literally be there with another human being. So ultimately, this ends up being the era where this is really why we know Duke Ellington, but this era came at a cost. And so we're talking about black excellence. And as we're talking about black excellence, there's a price to being black. And that price to being black meant that while he had this wonderful opportunity of playing for white Americans, who were the ones who were able to patronize this club, also meant that this is where his relationship with a gentleman by the name of Irving Mills came in and got to put his name on everything Duke Ellington wrote for about the next 25 years. Because of a contract that they wrote where he literally took the lion's share of the earnings from Duke Ellington's work. His writing, Irving Mills got credit. And so if you look at a lot of pieces from this period, it'll say Duke Ellington and Irving Mills because of this terrible contract that Duke Ellington signed. But Irving Mills was literally the leading manager at that time. He was the one that was able to get even a young colored man from Washington, D.C. onto major record labels, which were still not quite open to African Americans, right? And Duke Ellington starts recording kind of like just in the electronic recording era around 1927. So that it's still a brand new world, and Irving Mills is able to open up that world to a Duke Ellington. So it came at a cost, but he had to pay for that. Had he been anybody else, he probably could have got a much better deal. Although Irving Mills was notorious, he kind of did it to everybody, but he knew he had something special in Duke Ellington, and so he completely took advantage of Duke Ellington in that way. So what is the cultural impact that Ellington leaves for us in this era? Well, one, he is a complete different figure than what is being seen on stage at the Cotton Club. How many of you all have ever heard of Josephine Baker? She was a really important early American entertainer, but she was an African-American woman who was gorgeous. I don't know who we can kind of compare her to today. But unfortunately, at the Cotton Club, they would do these jungle scenes. And pieces like one of the pieces we're going to hear tonight, Caravan, which was done in this jungle style, which is a piece that she might have been there on stage in nothing but a banana skirt and no top. So it was an exploitative time for the culture. But when you would see Duke Ellington's orchestra there, dressed in their tuxedos, looking as important as any member of the New York Symphony Orchestra, it was this perfect dichotomy that really kind of set how things could be different and ultimately the dignity that people could have even in the midst of something that was completely degrading, right? In the midst of you watching this and maybe being entertained by what is happening on stage, if you just happen to look over at the orchestra, you would have seen, 12 to 16 perfectly groomed black men in their suits and their ties, perfectly representing the culture in a completely different way than what was entertaining the people of the day. So that's the cultural impact. So one of the things that we love is that Duke Ellington's real name was Edward, but he had a swagger, as you all would say, about him that even from a young age, from a child, one of his friends, because of the way Duke dressed, he was able to dress really well. He had middle-class He had middle-class family. So he can go to the store and get whatever he wanted. And he said, you look like a duke. He said, we can't call you Edward. We can't call you Ed. You dress too nice. So he had this nickname, the Duke, which traveled with him. And so ultimately, by the time we see him at the Cotton Club, not only are we calling him Duke Ellington, but he's oftentimes wearing a top hat as he sits at the piano. And he looks like something completely different. Who is this regal, magical figure that we're seeing that is producing all of this music? And it's Duke Ellington. And so he became kind of one of the figures. He was one of the mega stars, if you will, of the day, an accepted black figure in a time when we are very much a segregated America. So dignity and integrity are nothing if you don't have resistance and leadership. And as Duke Ellington began to write, he always had a social conscience. And I think some of it came from how he grew up. He was black and middle class in a period that was literally probably almost 75 years before we would get a Cosby Show or Jefferson's, where we would even begin to see, African Americans who were upwardly mobile, shall we say. But he knew even then he was different. He was different by his economic status, but also because of his color. And so we talk about people being African American, but even within that, there's this thing called colorism. And Duke Ellington was an extremely fair-complected black man, to the point where if you really kind of look at some pictures, you really don't know what race he is. If you're not really thinking about it, if you don't know that that's Duke Ellington, you might not say, oh, that's a black man. He's just an old guy, depending on the picture that you look or that you see. And he knew that that came with advantages, because at places like the Cotton Club, one of the reasons why he got the gig is because he was a light-skinned black man. The Cotton Club had a paper bag test. Paper bag tests were real. How many of you all have ever heard of a paper bag test? Paper bag tests were real. I grew up in a household where I was blessed to spend a lot of time with my great-grandmother, who was born in 1916 and was actually a classmate of Billy Strayhorn's. And they lived actually in the same neighborhood. I actually know the Strayhorn family. I've kind of grown up around them my entire life. But I thought my great-grandma was probably one of the most beautiful women I ever saw. But she's Viola Davis's color, right? And I know I can say this in a room of Rhode Islanders. You all love Viola Davis. God forbid somebody say she's not beautiful, right? Because she belongs to you all. But she could not have worked at the Cotton Club because she couldn't pass the paper bag test. And I had a great-grandmother that told me stories about her not being able to work at downtown department stores or restaurants in the city where I grew up, that by the time I came along, we floated in freely. We could go in and out. But when she was a young woman in her teens and 20s, she couldn't get jobs there because she couldn't pass a paper bag test. And so Duke Ellington knew that he had certain advantages that other people didn't. And this is real, because if you look at who replaced his Duke Ellington at the Cotton Club, it was Cab Calloway, another very fair-complected African-American man. So it was something that was really real. And so he would push back on these things. Early in his career, he writes something called Black and Tan Fantasy. Black and Tan Fantasy ends up getting a movie short that's done of it, where we get to see kind of black life acted out in this really short, 11-minute film. You can find it readily on YouTube. And it wins an Oscar. And we don't talk about that very often, but it was one of the first times that we see something like that to get an award. So he pushed back in his own ways, whether it be Black and Tan Fantasy or Black, Brown, and Beige. He's always talking about blackness in America in his own way for people to consider. And when you hear him in later years, when he's interviewed in the 50s and the 60s, he talks about race outright. he talks about race. And so he was always pushing back, and he knew that he was this beloved figure. He knew that he had a certain privilege, but he was never afraid to hide from the problems of the day and the ability he had to kind of speak to those. Another culturally significant and kind of black excellence piece is the innovation of genre. Duke Ellington, with pieces like Caravan and so many other works that some that you'll hear tonight and others that maybe you'll go and listen to on your own, created genres, even within jazz, what we would call subgenres. How many of you all have ever heard of Latin jazz? Maybe you were here on Tuesday, you saw our Latin jazz ensemble. Duke Ellington had, amongst one of his longer tenured members of his orchestra, was a gentleman by the name of Juan Tizal. Juan Tizal was a trombonist from Puerto Rico. And Juan Tizal had all of these rhythmic ideas and understanding of forms and musics that were very much part of the Afro-Caribbean diaspora that had not fully been integrated into American music yet. They were beginning to be, as people who were in Spanish Harlem, which we don't talk about anymore, but Spanish Harlem was a real part of New York City. It was a major part of New York City, which was kind of wiped out for Lincoln Center. We love Lincoln Center. We love to go down and see the operas and see the shows, but that particular institution wiped out a lot of what we would consider to be Spanish Harlem. But as these people were coming in, Duke Ellington was one of the first to embrace a Puerto Rican American. That's kind of a double. That's a double negative. A Puerto Rican man, because he was American, a Puerto Rican man to come in and join this ensemble, but also to bring his culture, and to do so in such a way that the musics could fuse and we can get a fusion, and then all of a sudden we're getting a brand new music. So things like Caravan are now staples of Latin jazz, but they would not be if Duke Ellington didn't have the foresight to include this man in his ensemble and say, not just have him come and play his music, but to bring his own music and to collaborate. So he was one of the major collaborators. So innovation was a major part of who Duke Ellington was. When we talk about the tenure of Duke Ellington's band, as a tenured professor here at the university, I can tell you it's a wonderful thing to have tenure. But one of the other major institutions in America that uses tenure are our orchestras. Our symphonic orchestras, especially those in major cities, Boston, New York, Chicago, Pittsburgh, which other one? St. Louis, Los Angeles. You name a big city that has a major orchestra, some of those members are tenured and many of them are working to get their tenure. Duke Ellington did that without even the policies and the contracts and the whatever. Harry Carney was in his band from the time that they were the Washingtonians until I think he did 28 years. 28 years kind of sitting in the same seat. I mean, and really beginning to define what the baritone saxophone was going to be in jazz. Still to this day, if you're a baritone saxophone player, you can't skip Harry. You just can't skip. It's like a trumpet player skipping Louis Armstrong. You just can't do it. You gotta check this guy out because he's one of the defining sounds, and he did it mostly from the seat with Duke Ellington, but also kind of defining how the modern clarinet was going to sound in jazz, because the Duke Ellington Orchestra was one of the first bands to really emphasize that the players of the woodwind section play multiple instruments, right? You had to play multiple instruments. You couldn't just play sax. You got to play sax and clarinet or sax and flute or whatever it was that Duke Ellington might have thought that he needed, and a lot of that came because of his work at the Cotton Club. If the show's changing every week, the composer has to be able to change the sounds, and that's something that Duke Ellington would do. So Harry Carney. The other person is one of my heroes, is a gentleman by the name of Lawrence Brown. Lawrence Brown. How many of you all have ever heard of a man by the name of Tommy Dorsey? Tommy Dorsey, and I love Tommy Dorsey, but we tend to give him credit. We tend to pretend like he was the only trombone player that played the way that he did in the swing era. But if you listen to the Duke Ellington records, Lawrence Brown is literally doing the same thing. They're playing really high, these sweet singing solos that are kind of way above what a normal trombone player would want to play. So great range, great technical flexibility, a great ability to play a melody and to kind of sing it. He did about 22 years with the orchestra. Same seat, same seat. And then finally, probably one of the most important sounds in a jazz orchestra is that of a lead alto player. And Johnny Hodges kind of really came to define that. The sound that he had, he played about 20 years with the orchestra. So when we talk about being tenured in a band, if you compare this, I mean, Count Basie changes his band probably 4 times over, 5 times over, at least the whole band in the stretch of the tenure of maybe one of these 3 members of the Duke Ellington Orchestra. And there were many more that had well over a decade, well over 15 years. Duke Ellington really prided himself in picking people not just for their ability to play the parts that he had now, but also because he could hear something that he wanted from them to be able to feature them. So if we go back and we look at his music, you could literally find a feature for almost every member of that orchestra. And very few people that played with that orchestra in Duke Ellington's lifetime did he not write for. One of the few was one of my heroes, Julian Priester, who's actually still living. I think he's 90 years old right now. But Julian Priester famously told me when I was writing my dissertation, he said, yeah, when I was at the Duke Ellington Orchestra, it didn't go real well. I said, what do you mean? He said, Duke kept telling me, I can't hear anything to write for you. And he said, I can't hear anything to write for you. And I think it was a sign that by the mid-1960s, when Julian joined that band, the playing of the modern jazz players was so far ahead of where Duke Ellington's kind of palette was that was starting to become a thing, right? These new guys are playing things that were kind of just a little further stretched than what Duke Ellington was comfortable with. So he had a strategy for writing for the band that has really maybe only been replicated well by the Thad Jones, Mel Lewis Orchestra. I think maybe Thad Jones had the same sensibilities, but he wrote personalized compositions for individual players, some of which you're going to hear tonight. One of those that you're going to hear tonight is Echoes of Harlem. Now, Harlem ends up being his adopted home. He lives there. His apartment there is a National Historic Site if you ever get a chance to go and see it. It's an amazing, just to walk by this place and realize that Duke Ellington used to walk in and out of this building on a regular basis, just as a regular human being. But he would write these personalized pieces, and we're going to hear one. We'll feature a couple of our trumpet players on a piece that was written for the great Cootie Williams. And Cootie Williams did a long tenure in the Ellington band. He would write other pieces, Isfahan, which you're going to hear performed by one of our juniors, Mr. Ben Resendiz, is going to play Isfahan for you. And it's a piece that doesn't exist without the sound of Johnny Hodges. You need to sound like Johnny Hodges to even come anywhere near playing it correctly. And so you could hear it was something that he very much had in mind, a person in his orchestra. And I think that is really unique when you hear a jazz orchestra, because normally when you go to a jazz orchestra, it's just random person, stand up and play and let us hear your voice. But with these Duke Ellington compositions, they're very much tailored for someone. The other thing that Duke Ellington did was he considered the ensemble to be an instrument. And so he would use the whole ensemble as an instrument to develop these sounds, to develop these feelings, to develop this palette. He would use the ensemble in that particular way. And he created voicings and did things that could make you feel like you were in another place. When you hear Isfahan tonight, you're very much going to feel like you're in the Middle East, because he very much, through just visiting and just thinking about these different things, comes up with a structure that very much makes you feel like you're in that place. So it's a really different compositional strategy. So those are two of the key works that we're going to feature tonight, and I hope you'll listen out for the trumpet on Echoes of Harlem, listen out for the alto saxophone on Isfahan. And one of the things that was unique about Duke Ellington in comparison to any other big band writer, every major big band in the United States had a what? Every major big band in the United States had a what? Singer, not the Duke Ellington Orchestra. He rotated through singers left and right, and not because he didn't have good singers, but the singers were never like a built-in part of the show. You didn't have to have a singer to go see Duke Ellington, but you needed a singer to maybe go see, Benny Goodman, or, Woody Herman, or any of the other bands at some point need a singer to carry the thing. And Duke Ellington used everybody. I mean, people from Bessie Smith to Mahalia Jackson to Ella Fitzgerald. How many of you all have ever heard of Natalie Cole, Nat King Cole's daughter? The reason why Nat King Cole ends up having a daughter named Natalie Cole is because Duke Ellington was using this really cute singer who happened to be Natalie Cole's mother. She sang with the Duke Ellington Orchestra. If you go back and you look at the list of singers for Duke Ellington, it's a really interesting list, whereas in comparison to somebody like Count Basie, the singers are more of an integral part and very specific. Basie used mainly men until the 1950s when he gets to the New Testament era, because his primary singer going into the 1950s was Jimmy Rushing, Mr. 5x5. He wanted people that could sing the blues. And then right after that, he has another man from Georgia by the name of Joe Williams, who was also a really good blues singer who happened to be able to sing a little bit more jazz than Jimmy Rushing could. And then we start to see where people like Ella Fitzgerald and Sarah Vaughan and, ultimately people like Frank Sinatra and others would sing with Count Basie, but it was more specific. You can think of who the singers were for Basie. You can't do that same formula with Ellington. What era, what record? It's a hodgepodge of this and that. So, but tonight we're blessed to have In the Pocket come and do a set of arrangements from a singer by the name of Andy Bay. So this gentleman that you see on your far left of this picture is a gentleman by the name of Andy Bay, who we just lost last year, but he had a trio with himself and two of his sisters that they would just do all these different really custom arrangements of jazz standards, and he loved Duke Ellington. And so we're going to hear two of his arrangements of standards. One is Solitude, which will feature the whole big band and the entire jazz choir. It's going to be massive. I might be standing right next to some of you all as I try to conduct all of this. And then the other is a song called Just Squeeze Me. So one of the last things I want to talk about tonight is diversity and inclusion is one of the main reasons why a Duke Ellington is important. In an era where we're talking about the rolling back, the getting away from things that have kind of over the last few decades helped to bring us together as Americans, to begin to look at each other and see each other as their full, authentic selves without any mask or any hiding. Duke Ellington was doing that in an era when it was not okay. Beginning in the 1930s, his chief assistant, ghostwriter, whatever you want to call him, was a man by the name of Billy Strayhorn. Billy Strayhorn was an openly gay man in the 1930s and 40s. It was not okay to be openly anything in the 1930s and 40s. It was a much different America. But because of his love for Billy, partially as a writer and arranger, he was blown away when he got to Pittsburgh, and someone told him that you should hear this kid. He's 20, and he can sound just like you. And Duke Ellington said, no one can sound just like me. And they said, you got to hear this kid. He can sound just like you. And he said, okay, he can sound just like me. And they're like, no, but he can write stuff that you haven't written, and it sounds just like you. And he said, there's no way. And so he has Billy Strayhorn come down to his dressing room. And they would have pianos in the dressing room back in those days. And on an upright piano in Duke Ellington's dressing room, he played some stuff, and it blew Duke Ellington away. And Duke Ellington said, we're going to stay in touch. They exchanged addresses because we had no cell phones. They couldn't text message each other, right? You all still with me? No text messaging. So they had to send letters. In one of those letters, Duke Ellington says, son, you're amazing, and I know you like being at home, but you're really kind of wasting your life there. You should come to New York. And if you come to New York, here's how you get to my house. And ultimately, that song ends up becoming what? Take the A Train. Take the A Train, which was a Billy Strayhorn composition. It was based off of Duke Ellington's written directions on how to get to his house once Billy got to New York City. So within this band, he not only found a space, Billy Strayhorn did, to be a composer. He found a place to really launch his professional career where he didn't have to worry about who he was or being who he was, but he also found a place of safety. The Ellington band and the entire Ellington band protected Billy. They were a shield for him and his partner for years when that wasn't a thing. And the band was all there when Billy passed away in 1966. And so one of the pieces we're going to play tonight is something that Billy wrote from his bed as he was dying of cancer. So we're going to hear something where he literally tries to reflect the sounds of the machines and the kind of the busyness of the hospital. Any of you all who have had to sit with a loved one as they transition and you're sitting in the hospital, you know the sounds. And so you're going to hear those sounds in a song that we're going to play tonight called Blood Count. So we thank Duke Ellington for being forward-thinking and for allowing Billy to be himself and for giving us a path and a way to do that for others. And so the Harlem Renaissance was the era in which he comes up in New York. And I think this is important because for as much as I love people like James Weldon Johnson, I love Zora Neale Hurston, I think with music, we too easily maybe throw people on at the end of the list. But Duke Ellington was just as transformational a figure of the Harlem Renaissance as any of those. And we would not have the America that we have today if we did not have the work that he did in Harlem, at the Cotton Club, and ultimately in the world, where he used this short little window where America was really interested in and really focused on black excellence and these people who were coming to New York City, lots of them as refugees, but some even as immigrants, to this new place that was going to give them an opportunity to be themselves in a way that they could not in an America where we were still living under Jim Crow law, right? Whether on paper, by law, or even in the North where we had de jure laws, which meant they existed, but they were not written down, but you knew that you had to stay in your own black part of town. But in New York City, they could be anything. And so we see that he really came in and knew how to work this new social system well and come forward. So with that, I look forward to playing this music for you all tonight. And I hope I've left you all with a better understanding of the importance and the significance of Duke Ellington. Are there any questions? Anybody have questions about the great Duke Ellington? We're all family. Don't be scared. Anybody? All right. Go up. St. Aug's? I think so. I think it's St. Augustine. It's a great question. Yes. I think knowing the people, and also having enough business acumen to keep people paid, because if you, one of the main things that one of the main detriments, one of the reasons why the jazz orchestra did not flourish, shall we say, in the way that it should during that era, is that as the economic situation in the country changed and it became harder to pay an entire band, Ellington was always able to figure out how to pay the band. And so if you can make sure that people's lives are stable, they're going to be willing to stay with you. But if they feel like their lives are not stable, if they can't send money home to their wives and their children, they got to leave you. And so that's one of the reasons why that tenure really worked out. Yes. That's it. No side gigs. No side. That's a great question. Most of the members of the Duke Ellington Orchestra, during the periods that they're with Duke Ellington, you're not going to find them on a lot of other records. And that's something that if you study jazz, even if you look at the big bands, the major players, you could talk about, what's a good example? Almost everybody is making kind of stuff on the side to supplement what they're doing, even with the orchestra that was paying. But most of the Duke Ellington Orchestra did not feel that they needed to do that, or they just didn't do it. So there are some recordings, but not as many. Not as many. So they were able to make a full living with the band. So it's a great question. Anything else? All right, I thank you all. And with that, we'll be with you with the show in just a few minutes. All right, so how about it for this band? So we started with an Ellington composition called Sea Jam Blues, but we're really proud that one of our juniors actually did the arrangement of that. So how about a big round of applause for Mr. Ben Resendiz on. Ben is also our straw boss for the year, so he's second in charge. So this next piece is something called Smada. Smada. This was arranged by the great Billy Strayhorn, but was written by Duke Ellington. So this is one of those pieces we were talking about in the talk. Duke Ellington had the kind of the shape and the structure, and then Billy Strayhorn took it and kind of breathed life into it. This is Smada. Mr. Colin Clampert on clarinet. Colin Clampert. So next we're going to feature two of our trumpet players. Our lead trumpet player, Mr. Sebastian Rosa on trumpet, as well as our brand new to the band and freshman in the band, Mr. Mike Monjo on trumpet as well. They're going to be playing the part of Cootie Williams on the great Duke Ellington composition, Echoes of Harlem. Echoes of Harlem. Okay, so we have a brand new vocalist for this school year, and so we're gonna bring out our new vocalist for the 25-26 academic year, Ms. Liz O'Connor. And Ellington had a deep love and respect for the blues, so this first piece is deeply connected to the blues. This is I Got It Bad.
Treats me sweet and gentle the way you should. I got it bad, and that ain't good. Heart is sentimental, not made of wood. I got it bad, and that ain't good. But when the fish are jumping and Friday rolls around, my man and me, we chant song and pray some and sing some. Love me like I love him. Nobody could. I got it bad, and that ain't good. Weeping willow, lost in the wind. Lord, I got it bad, that ain't Our soloist, Tyler Bellucci, on sax. dream of love is coming true within our desert caravan. Night, 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 and stars above that shine so bright. The mystery of their fading light that shines upon our caravan. Sleep upon my shoulder as we creep across the sand, so I may keep this memory of our caravan. This is so exciting. You are so inviting.
Liz O'Connor on vocals. Mr. Paul Martin on trumpet. Colin Clampert on tenor saxophone. Mr. Ben Resendiz on clarinet. Clarinet. And Luca Mayer on guitar. So this is a Duke Ellington composition that was written to go with some other compositions that he did based off of the works of William Shakespeare. This is called Such Sweet Thunder. Okay, so as you can see, this is a pretty independent group. I don't do a lot of this, but if you think about it, Duke Ellington did not really conduct a band. He mostly sat at the piano and would give very small cues. So, you know, jazz ensembles are really built to be independent, and so we're going to see a little bit more of that. The next composition is something from the Far East Suite, which if you've not heard that, it is one of the suites of Ellington music that I really highly recommend that you listen to the whole thing. It's probably as famous as his Nutcracker Suite. I would say they're probably running neck and neck in importance. Those tend to be the two that people readily know. If you say name an Ellington suite, it's either the Far East Suite or the the Nutcracker Suite, but we're going to feature Mr. Ben Rezendes on Isfahan. So as I said in the lecture, this next piece, Blood Count, was written by Billy Strayhorn as he lay in his bed in the hospital fighting cancer. So just imagine all of the sounds that you hear at a hospital is kind of the backdrop of what he was infusing this melody over. And so if you kind of close your eyes and you can imagine maybe the visits you've had with loved ones, the more somber times in the hospital, that's exactly kind of the setting for this next piece. This is Blood Count. So next up is another Billy Strayhorn composition, but it's really kind of one of the standards of the Duke Ellington Orchestra. This is Chelsea Bridge. And just a little bit more about Billy Strayhorn, to talk about his genius. How many of you all have ever heard of a piece called Lush Life? A song called Lush Life, the great Billy Strayhorn composition. He wrote that at 16 years old. He was 16 years old when he wrote Lush Life, which is probably one of the hardest compositions in the jazz canon. Most people, only toy around with it on occasion. It's so hard, right? It's not something that they do all the time. It's a really hard piece. Billy Strayhorn wrote that at 16, so just kind of keep that in mind. This is his great Chelsea Bridge. Chelsea Bridge. How about, this is a great time to introduce the band. How about it for that wonderful trombone section? Mr. Aiden McCrillis on trombone. Zachary Lissy on trombone. Ms. Katja Fedor on trombone. How about it for our wonderful trumpet section as well? Michael Monjo on trumpet. Sebastian Rosa on trumpet. Mr. Paul Martin on trumpet. Janaea Smith on trumpet. How about it for our saxophone section? Mr. Colin Clampert on saxophone and clarinet. Mr. Tyler Vanucci on alto saxophone and clarinet. Mr. Ben Rezendes on everything. Mr. Garrett Newhall on saxophone and flute. And our special guest with us today, Mr. Logan. The sway. I jacked that up. It's all Logan. I was doing so well. I was proud of me. Were you proud of me? You were proud of me pretty much? Yeah, for the most part. All right. About it for our rhythm section, Mr. Now you forget everybody's name. Mr. Matt Ippolito on drums. Carlton Fisher on bass. AJ Javery on bass. Luca Mayer on guitar. Corey Braga on vibraphone. And our own Duke Ellington for tonight, Mr. Arthur Gauld on piano. All right, so we're gonna ask our wonderful singer, Ms. Liz O'Connor, to come back and sing Don't Get Around Much Anymore.
Missed the Saturday dance. Heard they crowded the floor. Couldn't bear it without you. Don't get around much anymore. Thought I'd visit the club. Got as far as the door. No fun there without you. Don't get around much anymore. Darling, I guess I'm much more at ease, but nevertheless, why stir up memories? Been invited on dates, might have gone, but what for? Couldn't bear it without you. Don't get around much anymore. Oh, darling, I guess I'm much more at ease, but nevertheless, why stir up memories? Been invited on dates, might have gone, but what for? Couldn't bear it without you. Don't get around much anymore. Oh, I couldn't bear it without you. Don't get around much anymore.
All right, now with no further ado, our wonderful jazz choir. How about it for In the Pocket?
Congratulations. We are in the pocket. Somebody asked me right before we started what that means. There's lots of different time fields in jazz, and Duke Ellington exemplifies that a lot. He's got such a diverse range of repertoire. But one of the compliments that you can give to a jazz musician is that they really play in the pocket. groove that's really solid. You know, we're not metronomes, although we try to have really, really good, perfect time, but there's a groove within that. So that's why we call ourselves In the Pocket, because that's what we're looking for. This next tune is an Ellington song called Just Squeeze Me. One, two.
Treat me sweet and gentle when you say goodnight. Just squeeze me, but please don't tease me. I get sentimental when you hold me tight. Just squeeze me, but please don't tease me. Missing you since you went away, singing the blues away each day, counting the nights and waiting for you. I'm in the mood to let you know I never knew I loved you so. Please say you love me too. When I get this feeling, I'm in ecstasy. So squeeze me, but please don't tease me. Treat me sweet and gentle when you say goodnight. Just squeeze me, but please don't tease me. I get sentimental when you hold me tight. Just squeeze me, but please don't tease me. Missing you since you went away, singing the blues away each day. I'm counting the nights and waiting for you. I'm in the mood to let you know I never knew I loved you so. Please say you love me too. When I get this feeling, I'm in ecstasy. So squeeze me, but please don't tease me. Don't tease me, but come on and just squeeze me.
I want to extend a quick thank you to Dr. David Gilland on the piano. Much more than a collaborative pianist. He's holding the group together a lot of the time. Thank you, David.
In my solitude, you haunt me with reveries of days gone by. In my
All right. So we just want to get ready to close. And before we do, we just want to thank you all for a fantastic night. Thank you for such a great crowd for the pre-show talk. I hope you all enjoyed that. And thank you all for coming out and helping us to celebrate 125 years of Duke Ellington, right? How about it for Duke Ellington? And so we're going to close with another great standard of the band that was written by Billy Strayhorn, but kind of appropriate for the weather today. I wish we could take a rain check on the weather, but we can't take a rain check on the weather. This is Duke Ellington's Rain Check.
One, two, up.
Duke Ellington's Rain Check. Mr. Garrett Newhall on tenor saxophone. Sebastian Rosa on trumpet. Mr. Arthur Galt on piano. How about it for this band one more time? How about it for these singers? Come on up in the pocket. Come on up. Come on. These wonderful singers and their director, Ms. Atla D. Champagne. How about it? How about it? How about a big round of applause for these singers that did a wonderful job? Our special guest, Ms. Aaliyah Terrace. So we thank you all for coming out, and it's been a busy week. We've had jazz combos. We had the orchestra last night. Big band is tonight. Sunday, there's a wind ensemble and concert band and American band. So always lots of music making going on here. We hope that you'll come back and join us. If you are here for one of the music courses, if you're here for one of the Gen Ed courses, Music 101, 105, or 106, please see Dr. Goods afterwards so that you can sign in and get credit for today's class. All right. With that being said, have a great night. Drive safe. We hope to see you soon. God bless.